This lesson will cover the topic of judicial review more in depth. Judicial review, remember, is one of the checks and balances that's in place in our government. It's a Supreme Court power, and it allows the Supreme Court to keep a check on actions taken by all other parts of the government. Judicial review is not specifically mentioned in the Constitution. Instead, it's a power that was established by Chief Justice John Marshall in the early 1800s during a case called Marbury v. Madison. We'll take a closer look at this case later in the year, so I'm not going to say too much about it now, other than for you to know that the way this case was decided essentially said that the court had the power to declare government actions unconstitutional. And that's exactly what judicial review does. It allows the Supreme Court to say that something the government has done goes against the Constitution and therefore cannot be allowed. Some examples of things the Supreme Court might rule unconstitutional are laws passed by Congress, laws passed in a given state or policies made by given local governing bodies, or actions taken by the President. The Supreme Court does not automatically review every law that is written. This would take way too much time. Someone has to bring a case to court in order for the judicial review process to begin. Cases begin in the lower state or lower federal courts. They get to the Supreme Court when a plaintiff or a defendant does not think their case has been decided correctly and continues to believe what is being done to them is unconstitutional, so they continue to appeal. Approximately 10,000 cases are appealed to the Supreme Court each year. 10,000. Out of those, only 75 to 80 are actually heard by the Supreme Court in a given year. The majority rules. That is, nowadays there are 9 Supreme Court justices, so if 5 or more of them, whatever way those 5 or more decide, that's the way the ruling swings. Interestingly, approximately 1/3 of all rulings are unanimous, in that all 9 justices agree. Rulings are expressed in written opinions. There will be a majority opinion, that is, here's what the majority of us believe and why we decided the way we did. There are dissenting opinions, which are written by the folks who don't agree, who disagree with the ruling. And then there's something called a concurring opinion. Those can be written by justices who agreed with the majority and voted with the majority, but who have something else to add as far as their reason why they agreed. All of these opinions can be looked up online. You can find any Supreme Court case and the majority and dissenting opinion and concurring opinion, if there is one, for any case ever heard. Okay, here's a spot where I'm going to ask you to pause and add to your notes, not just notes, but a little bit of brain work as well. Take a look at this cartoon and explain to me in writing how it illustrates the concept of judicial review. You'll want to talk about what each symbol, person, the football field, the yard lines, the sideline, what all of that represents, and you'll also want to tell me why the football player is saying what he is saying. Please pause the video here to do this work. When you've finished writing your answer and adding it to your notes, go ahead and continue. All right, another little bit of work for you, the last one here, is a you decide. Consider this case, which was brought before the Supreme Court. First, some background. There are legal codes pertaining to the treatment of American flags. One of these codes says, quote, "No disrespect should be shown to the flag of the United States of America." I'm sure that's a familiar idea to you. Well, based on this code, Congress wrote a law named the Federal Flag Desecration Law. To desecrate something means to destroy it, or to, that's not quite the right word, to tarnish it in some offensive way. And this federal flag desecration law said it was illegal to publicly mutilate, deface, defile, burn, or trample on the flag as an act of protest. Is this law constitutional? If this were brought to the Supreme Court, what do you think they should decide? Pause the video here and write your answer beneath your cartoon explanation, being sure to not just say yes, it's constitutional or no, it's not constitutional, but also to explain your reasoning. When you're ready, go ahead and continue. The actual decision, and there have actually been more than one case relating to the burning of the American flag, but I'm going to refer specifically to a case of Street versus New York, which was decided in 1969. Sidney Street was the man who was convicted of violating the law. He burned a flag during a demonstration in support of civil rights leader James Meredith. This would have been during the height of the civil rights movement, the same movement Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, those guys were involved in. The Supreme Court ruled in a close ruling, 5-4, that Street's flag burning was protected by the First Amendment as free speech. Since the First Amendment is part of the Constitution, the law about desecrating the American flag, the Supreme Court said, goes against that part of the Constitution and therefore was not a constitutional law. So to review, judicial review is a Supreme Court power that allows them to have a check over all other areas of government. It's not a power that's specifically mentioned in the Constitution, but it lets them say that something the government has done goes against the Constitution and therefore cannot be allowed.